Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back again. Today marks yet another week. We have almost 20 weeks in. Still few weeks to go, but we are going strong. I personally didn't expect we would go so long, and it feels like I'm saying it every time. Uh, I think after 21st trial, I'm not going to do it because there's a saying after the 21st time, it becomes a habit. So hopefully we can go to 21st time. There were some stops along the way. We did some delay this week. But Anup is back with me here, and then yeah, earlier than expected, we finished the book. For this week, we had the book called "Lying with Statistics." Anup, how did you find the book?
It's called How to Lie with Statistics. Don't start lying right now, right?
I picked up some tips from the book. Uh,
Yeah, actually, like this book, it was recommended by my professor, like in the
mm,
first semester, right? Who did the course Introduction to Data Science. Ever since then, I wanted to read this book and just know what it is about, right? There are some stuffs that I knew, but some stuffs was new in this book. But basically, it's about um, statistics, how you can use statistics or yeah, misuse statistics to your own gain, right? And why you should be aware about it. It was pretty interesting, I would say, with all the figures and depictions, right?
yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, there's one thing I really like about that book is it's very humorous. It's
And
you're into the book, and the pictures are really funny as well. And the way the writer writes it is quite nice. I think it's like a generational style at that time because I remember reading this book called How to Influence People and Win Friends, which is also from a
Mhm.
similar time period, and it's also
Mhm.
written with that same style, the same American
But
style. So,
believe me, I don't know like which edition you read.
hmm.
There is an older edition of this book which is like really hardcore. So
Oh, okay,
this version that we read, I think, is like the newer version.
okay,
Right? Like it says like illustrated by Irving Guys. It
mm-hmm.
had like this red cover, I think, right?
Mm, yeah,
But the older version one, it is not politically correct at all. So um, go through some of the depictions and some of the chapters from the old version, and you will see like how language itself has changed over the time.
mm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I remember reading some lines which was derogatory towards black people, and well, I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
Mm.
but. Indeed, it's still. I think it is a really good book. I think this should be included in something like a curriculum for high school. Everybody needs
Yeah.
to know about this.
Mm, mm, mm,
Yeah, this reminds me of something. So after we read Freakonomics, right?
mm,
I had a discussion with one of my aunt about this topic, and
mm,
she's a researcher by profession, so she's very much into statistics. And
mm,
I told her one of the argument that the book makes is that the likelihood of accident or death by airplane flight is almost same as the likelihood by traveling by automobile, right? By
mm,
car.
mm, mm,
And I was like, yeah, but people just worried about nothing else and blah blah. And she made a
mm,
really good argument that yeah, you can lie with statistics because it's
mm,
not it's not the likelihood of death that scares the person, it's the chance of fatality. So if you get into a car accident, then there's likelihood that you can survive. But if you get
mm,
into a flight accident, then it's probably you're not going to survive. And
mm, mm,
her
mm,
argument was that you're not worried about it because of the likelihood of accident. Is that if you are in an accident, then there's almost no way for you to save yourself. And
mm, mm,
this remind while reading this book, it reminded me because she could. I realized she was really well informed about this, and a lot of uh, ways she counteracted some of the quick lazy facts that I read in the internet and
mm, mm,
quipped in our general conversation, and
mm,
correct
mm.
me using some of the ideas this book presents.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go with our usual flow. Or not, maybe you can summarize the book for us.
I Yeah, let's do it. But to be honest, like I forgot the content as such, But I'll tell you what I still remember. So in the beginning, it was about, I think, mean media, right? Like what kind of average people use to
Mm,
argue.
mhm,
to their benefit. So there was this one example with real estate manager who used to say like, yeah, the average income of this neighborhood is
Mm-hmm.
200,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
The annual income. So the person who wanted to buy the house, he thought like, ah, this is a pretty good neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So after 1 year, um, the real estate manager kind of tells to him that the average is certainly, what was it again?
50,000 or something like that. No.
50,000 or something like that. So relatively low, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he was surprised, right? But the fact is that the real estate manager was not telling a lie. She was just, she or he was just um, telling
Making
about different kind
number.
of averages, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like mean, median, and mode, right? So
Yeah.
in the beginning, she was giving him the mean average, which
Mm-hmm.
just means like if you have like three, four wealthy, like really super wealthy people and a lot of poor people, then the arithmetic mean is still gonna
Yeah.
be relatively high, right?
Yeah.
But if you take the median, then you just order these people based on their salary and you just take the middle one,
Yep.
right? And if you take mode, you just take the amount that most of the people earn, right,
Mm-hmm.
of a sample. So earlier, I think she or he was arguing with the mean, and later on with the median. So that was one chapter. Then came chapters about I don't know, how you can suppose if you are working in a company, and this company made a certain profit,
Mm-hmm.
say for that year, right? That can be marginal, right, in
Yeah.
terms of the scale. If you show it in a chartboard, maybe it just increases slightly, like from let's say 1 million to 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the y-axis, like in a vertical way,
Mm-hmm.
you have the scale from I don't know 500,000, 1 million,
Mm-hmm.
So like if you have that in those kind of steps, then the graph, the line will seem that it is ascending like really slowly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you now, instead of using 500,000 and like 500,000 as steps, but like let's say 50,000 as steps, then suddenly you see a spike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which may strike to the people as like, oh, okay, this company is actually having a lot of profits in the last
Mm-hmm.
year, right? Even though it's still the same graph, just scaled differently.
Yep.
No?
Yep.
So I think that was that one part with the visualization. I found one example more like interesting in terms of visualization. That was that with this money stack,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That was quite interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because
That
I
kind of
think
just to
yeah,
add
Steven.
my
Mm,
idea that chapter whole reminded me of this phenomena in YouTube where people like measure distances based on the size of football field or the weight based on
mm, mm,
number of Toyota Corollas and stuff like that. So
mm,
it was
mm, mm, mm.
yeah it was really funny. The whole chapter
Yeah,
itself was quite funny.
yeah. The funny part is, I think like I would be fooled,
Yeah,
like if I hadn't read that chapter, like I would like go over this kind of thing and I'd be like, ah, okay, yeah, that's actually pretty impressive,
yeah,
even though maybe it's not that impressive in real life, right?
yeah. For me, I like that chapter, especially the part where he says about the graphs, right?
Mm,
Because I always get fooled by that. I mean,
mm,
irrespective
mm,
of so I was trying to figure out, looking at some of these. I normally try to follow these share indexes, uh, just for entertainment, and I always
mm.
get fooled by how the share index changes over time because
I mean, like the stock index, like
exactly, yeah,
the
stock
okay,
market,
okay.
yeah,
Mm,
feels like it's
mm,
going
mm,
through a very high spike,
mm, mm, mm.
but over a longer period of time the change is quite low as well. So
Yeah, I don't have that much knowledge of stocks in general to argue about that, to be honest.
no, I mean
We
I don't as well, but I just like to see
mm,
the spikes go up and down as such.
mm, mm,
I think
mm.
it's just like
Funny, funny thing is, like, I think there was this one, I don't know, in one book, maybe in Thinking Fast and Slow, this, or maybe another book, I don't know, where they say, like, even like for people like whom stocks really don't matter, right? Like they don't
mm,
have any stocks, they have different kind of assets,
mm,
it actually affects the psyche. So if you are, let's say, in America and suddenly the Dow Jones index falls, right,
mm,
and you have nothing to do with it whatsoever because you
mm,
haven't invested at all. No, I mean, like, you will certainly feel some indirect effect, right, but it won't
mm,
affect you directly. But
mm,
even those people are like um sad, because
mm.
of the fall, because of the bull market.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, it is also like that, I guess. If I see like, okay, the market is increasing, I feel happy, and if the
Mm,
market is decreasing, I feel sad. But
mm.
it actually, in that sense, also doesn't affect me directly, right?
No, no,
But,
no.
mm,
Yeah, that chapter was, and I really like the illustration of the rhino.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was nice.
Mm.
Let's do one week about investing. I think that's also a good follow-up for
Yeah,
economics and this book.
have a book about investing and what it works like.
Mm.
Yeah, and you were continuing. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, no problem. Then I think, let me remember what came afterwards. There was one thing about, can also how to actually like confuse people with statistics.
Yeah.
Something like, okay, nowadays, yeah, like you can give some weird conclusion, right? You can say
Mm.
like, okay, in 1900s, there were like less airplane accidents, and
Mm.
now there are like more airplane
Yeah.
accidents. That's why nowadays airplane traveling with airplane is more dangerous, right? That's a
Yeah.
wrong conclusion because
Yeah. Yeah.
back in the days, not that many people would travel
Yeah.
by airplane, right? And now
Yeah.
there are a lot of people traveling with airplane, so obviously you'll have more
More
accidents,
case.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm. That was one chapter which was nice. I found.
Mm.
Hmm. What else? Another one was like about that I think like that's for if you want to analyze some data points, right? That
Mm.
you should actually try and take a random sample. And
Yeah.
sometimes you might think that you take the random sample, but if you take a deeper look, maybe it's not random at
Yeah.
all. That
Yeah.
there was this one study, right, where they actually poll
Mm.
on whether the Democrats will win or the Republicans will win, and they, it seems, like just polled on the like on the users with telephone
Mm.
access, right?
Mm.
And I mean, like they can still do random polling on telephone users
Mm.
but back in the days there were not that many telephone users, right? So,
Mm.
and if they had telephone, then they were actually pretty, let's say, wealthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this poll showed more votes for the Republicans,
Mm.
but I think in the end the Democrats won, right?
Mm.
Just because more people with telephones tended to be Republican voters. I think that
Yeah.
was the statement. I don't want to say anything wrong, but I think that was the way.
Yeah.
Um, that was also interesting, I think.
Yeah. I like the examples she shows. It's like really funny as well in cases,
Mm-hmm.
but very intuitive. I was kind of, I would say, disappointed that he didn't include the idea of survivorship bias,
Mm-hmm.
where you have like bias in the data set because they are survivors of, because the data set only includes survivors. But
Let's give an example. Actually, like the teacher that recommended me, this book, he actually gave us one example, which I find is like really awesome.
yeah, I know. I
You
can
can
tell.
read that
I
one.
guess it's the same example because it's very
Yeah,
famous. It's during Second World War.
yeah.
The planes were returning back home, and then so the engineers saw all the planes who were back home had a lot of bullet holes in the wings. So they thought, oh, okay, we should probably uh, protect the wings because there were a lot of damages there. But later on, somebody found out that it's not necessary to protect the wings because the planes coming back had planes didn't have so many holes in the tail because they couldn't just come back. They would just crash after getting damages there, and so it are those are the places where there are no holes at all that's need to be protected. So that is one example of survivorship bias. I think another
Mm-hmm.
one would be when you look at millionaires and you would think, most of the millionaires are like high school dropouts, sorry, university dropouts, and you would think, oh, maybe if I drop out the university, then I will become a millionaire as well. But
Mhm.
that's the survivorship bias. It's because they are the only
Yeah.
survivors. That's why they turn out to be millionaires as well.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, what else? There was one example with that was also pretty nice. I felt, it was about so let's say sometimes we are taking thresholds too seriously, right?
Yep. Yep.
If you don't do something until this exact threshold, then maybe you are not qualified enough. There
Yep.
was
Yep.
this one example with this IQ test
Yep.
that a girl and a boy, they did the
Yep.
IQ test. The girl scored 101, the boy
Yep.
scored 99,
Yep.
and for an average IQ test is I think 100, like for that
Yeah.
age
Yeah.
group, right?
Yeah.
So now parents were like the girl's parents, they might be happy. They might think like, ah, my daughter, she is like above average,
Mm-hmm.
and the parents like of the boy might be worried, because
Yeah.
he's underperforming, right?
Yeah.
So
If I'm to summarize
this,
that, then I would say it's more like value of margins. You
mm,
should not take smaller margins too seriously. It's only
yeah.
going to be significant when you have larger margins.
I think in a way we are also trained like this in the high school. As I thought about it, say the exam, you pass the exam like with 51 points, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people who get like just a bit more than 50,
Mm,
they pass,
mm,
and who get less than 50, like just by a margin, they don't pass, right?
yeah.
So I think our mindset is like being embedded like that.
Exactly. And that's crazy. I once failed an exam by zero point 0.5 points.
Mm,
And yeah, I think thinking back to it, like it's so stupid. It's zero point 0.5. I I had got zero point 0.5 score more, then I would have passed. Uh, yeah. Uh, yeah.
mm,
The some of the more memorable points for me was later on in the chapter when he discusses more about how to interpret the datas, right?
mm,
Uh, I personally liked how he uh, gave us solutions to find the truth behind the facade. So if somebody tries to take
mm,
advantage of you with the use of statistics, then you can, yeah,
mm. That
find
one
behind it.
example was pretty convincing, I think. That one with the military, right?
Yeah, the one you mean about the death threat, right? The death threat in
Exactly.
the middle.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah, that was very convincing. That
Mm,
reminded me of a story that says that statistics was invented by lazy people who wanted to convince the king that
mm,
everything in the nation was going well. So
yeah,
people
yeah,
statistics needed to be invented because back in the days when the kings would ask, so they couldn't go to every county and figure out what's the situation there. So they had to send
mm,
somebody there, and if they report something bad, then they were likely to be hung. And
mm,
if they would lie, then also they are likely to be hung. So
mm,
they would bring up these statistics like this, sometimes in terms of percentage, sometimes in terms of absolute value, sometimes in terms of ratios, and then try to
mm,
trick
mm,
the king into convincing that
mm,
yeah,
mm,
everything's going well in the country itself. So
mm.
that's quite fascinating.
Let me ask you a question then. Now that you know about all this stuff, I mean, like maybe you also knew a lot of the stuff even before. Do you think you'll use this stuff to deceive people, like let's say your colleagues or I don't know,
Mm-mm.
someone else?
Yeah, I would try to do that actually, to be honest. A lot of the topics I work about is also related with numbers, and
Mm,
oftentimes I have to find interesting ways to communicate it. So it give me a lot of ideas to uh, understand, like, uh, w- so every time I have to communicate with someone and they give their own statistics, I
mm,
I always took them as face values, but nowadays I'll definitely go and take
mm.
a second thought about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like especially like if you have a lot of responsibility, like not responsibility in that sense, but if you actually need to show some results, right, and then your experiment just sucks, right? So
Mm-mm.
you won't say like, oh yeah, my experiment sucked, yeah. You try to kind of like come up with something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
true that.
I think the thing that we already knew, at least for me, I knew a lot of things mentioned in the book, probably
Mm-hmm.
speaks more about the significance of the book to the general populace because it's already quite well established and the knowledges are dissemi has already been disseminated. So it's kind of like the statistical uh,
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know about that, to be honest, because I feel the average person out there, like if you come
mm,
up with some random words like, I don't know, like the average, like
mm,
I think you could quite, really trick a lot of people with the term
yeah.
average.
Yeah, I no,
Um,
I meant I know that in principle. I just don't know that in action. So the
mm, mm,
theoretically,
mm.
we were aware about. I'm sure you were also aware about a lot of things mentioned there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
theoretically, not
Mm.
even though we might not apply it.
Look, I'm being honest with you. Like with a lot of the things, I was not aware.
Ah,
Like
okay.
one thing that I knew before,
Mm,
and that was also mentioned in this book is like I don't know, something like you ask me a question, okay, like ask me
mm.
a quantitative question, just for an example.
How many ships are there in Australia?
There are exactly 23.945 thousand ships right now. Right?
So,
So th- this one I knew, because I just found it out with trial and error, right? Like
okay.
you just have to say a floating number, it seems, rather than like whole numbers, and people will be, yeah, yeah, maybe that's true, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean
But,
that part was also quite impressive for me because oftentimes when I'm with my friends and then they ask me like, do you think these results are correct? And I would often say that yeah, it's not a multiple of five, so probably it's correct, right? Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, that's something really interesting. I also found the chapter about sampling very interesting
mm, mm,
because
mm,
we don't oftentimes pay attention to the sampling rate and the quantity they are sampling.
yeah.
And the way he presented it was quite interesting. I would also try to apply that in my future. But nevertheless, my point was that at least I had heard about a lot of those ideas. For example, mean and
Mm,
median, and also the sampling size. And there's one part where he talks that the when you're going to measure something in terms of percentage, then the base quantity plays a role. For example,
mm,
5 is 50% of 10, whereas it's only
mm,
5% of 100. So those kind of
mm,
ideas, I had already heard about them, was informed about it, and uh, yeah, I learned it from textbooks. Uh,
mm, mm,
but
mm,
yeah, I can imagine that somebody who wrote that textbook probably read this book because this is like
mm.
100 years old now, almost. And yeah, the ideas are already really prevalent, and I think this book will never get old.
Yeah, me too. I also don't think that there were also several references to other books in the beginning.
Yeah,
Maybe I will also take a look on those books.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As a verdict, I mean, there's a lot to cover about this book, and even though we want to give a brief summary, previously we were discussing every chapter by chapter, but I think for this book it's more suitable that we just try to keep it brief. I think we have already spoken more than we should.
Yeah,
The
I
book
think so too.
itself, in terms of the presentation, I think it's a really good read. The language is
Yeah.
very simple, very humorous. The
Mm,
illustrations are amazing. Like it just captivates you, and uh,
mm.
I really enjoyed it more than the content, as much as the content themselves. It's quite
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So that's was for our week. It's a short week this time. We gave a bit longer for the last week for the mammoth manufacturing consent. Keeping in tune, trying to preserve our sanity, we are going to do a shorter book. I think Anup has already finished the book, but I'm yet to do it. This is called A Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. So for next week, we will be reading Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Um, Please don't spoil too much, Anu, but what is your first impression about this book? Because the reason I recommend it is this already sounds very badass. The heading itself is like what I
But
thought.
it's
Just a moment. What I think this book is about is so somebody dies and then you have to clean the dead body. Is it about that?
uh, I won't tell you that.
Okay.
What I will tell you what I will tell you is like after I read the book, I started cleaning my room. You know.
Is it like Jordan Peterson, like you clean up your room, something
No,
like
no,
that?
it was not like that. But even that is a spoiler, right? So no,
Okay.
no, give it a try.
Okay, let's see. I was just looking for short non-fiction books because
Mhm.
we don't want to. Yeah, we wanted some quick books to get quick wins after finishing the Mammoth last week. So
Yeah,
this was what came to my mind, and then yeah, the Google said this, and then let's see. So for next week, we'll be reading The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning.
this week
Uh,
actually, this week.
yeah, this week. Hopefully, I can finish it soon enough and catch up.
It's a
Uh,
short read. I think you'll be able to do it. Yeah.
yeah, and yep, thank you very much, Anup, yet again. It was a good week this time. We read a really interesting book, and I have high hopes about the book for next week as well. So thank you very
Yep.
much, and have a great time. Keep reading.
Thank you. Bye bye, guys.
Bye.